We have great work. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. We're glad you're here. All right. The first official order of business is review and approval of the minutes of the meeting of March 25th, 2025.
I've reviewed and I move we approve the minutes March 25th, 2025.
Moved by Al Feldstein, a second by Sue. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Right. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole to review the financials, which we will ultimately approve as well.
Revenue. All tenants were current or ahead in March and April rent payments, except for one. We have reached out to that tenant who to date is nearly 6 months behind in rent. While we have been told that they would get back on track in April, that did not happen. At our last meeting, we had 2 applicants waiting Board of Public Works approval, and they have since been approved. We have 2 new tenants. They have paid their security in March and April. They paid their security deposits, moved in, and have begun paying rent. One paid early, which is noted in the revenue sheet. The other one paid in May, so that's not on it. Their official start time was May. The total amount of revenue brought in was $84,350.77 for March and April. As for expenses, we did spend a total of $149,821.94 over March and April in both general funds and special funds for fiscal year 25. Of note, things to note: travel, object code 402 includes some reimbursements from fall and winter timeframe that were finally approved downstate, and there is a hotel reservation for a future trip included in that. There were some items purchased under object code 0801 for a reimbursable marketing grant. Those items cost a little over $1,600. We have requested those funds for reimbursement. We hope to have them soon. We did make payments for the management consultants, object code 0821, and for fiscal services, which is object code 0829. In March for a combined total of $17,000 for those services, which are ongoing. Included in object code 0999 are 2 refunds. One was for an event that was canceled, and the other was for an individual that had applied to be a tenant, paid a refundable deposit, and those refunds totaled $988. Additionally, from fiscal year 24 money, an additional $10,548.55 was paid to Ecologics for the River Park in March and April for work performed. The full amounts of money paid out to Ecologic can be seen on the spreadsheet in the last column on the right hand side, along with other corresponding budgeted line item totals. Are there any questions?
Any questions, or do I hear a motion to approve?
I move the financials be approved as presented.
Second. Seconded. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, as I indicated before, Dee Dee does a very elaborate report. Certainly we would entertain any questions, and also give Dee Dee the opportunity, if there's some things in those reports that require special attention or needs to be highlighted, to mention those to Dee Dee if we have any those things and or any questions. I'm good. Well, one thing I thought that maybe I would point out, first of all, I forgot to mention that Tina Capetta, who is the National Park Service representative, I understand she is retiring. I received a notice saying that she needs to complete her final financial report, which says to me that she's retiring and moving off the board. So we want to acknowledge her service to the board. Also, there is one thing in there, and Dee Dee and I talked about this last week. I've been very focused on the Heritage Area Plan. You all know that since I met with you. The draft that's been circulating one of the things that is parallel to that was Senate Bill 980, which dealt with the opportunity to increase the potential of resources that could come to heritage area. As recent as 2 weeks ago, it was still on the governor's desk to be signed, and he did not sign it. So I don't know, Dee Dee, if you want to add any color to that, or maybe had some conversations and what it may or may not mean to an expanded heritage. So maybe just add a little bit of flavor to that.
Sure, that Senate bill would allow the Heritage Area Program to ask up to $12 million. In better times, and it was never that we were gonna get $12 million. It just meant in better times, we could ask up to 12 million. Since our heritage area is expanding, Anacostia just went countywide. Prices have gone up for everything. We were just asking for more money to reflect those costs, increasing costs. However, it all passed House, it passed Senate, it got to the governor, and the explanation that we got was because it was gonna take a harder blow to program open space. The state side of program open space, like the green space program, and there's some money going to Park Service this year. Couple of their other programs, Rural Legacy, I believe, that it just got vetoed, and all along we've been saying we're not asking for the money this year. We just want to be able to, again, in better times, get more than we get now. So from what I understand, they're going to try to put it back in front of the governor again. Senator Porterman, who was the Republican Senate sponsor from the House, and I think Waddle sponsored it from the delegate side. I know people have been writing into the government, and we're hoping it gets another chance to put it back in again next year.
So to be clear, as a point of procedure, he just didn't sign it, he actually vetoed it.
You need it,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, he vetoed it. Okay.
vetoed it.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure, because it's
Yeah.
not signing, it still goes in effect,
No,
but he
he
vetoed it.
vetoed
Okay,
it
okay.
and wrote a letter, and that's what the letter said.
Okay.
Yes.
The conversation for a different day from a enterprise risk management standpoint. You're currently getting about 225,000 state appropriations. What happens if we find out it's only 125,000 next year? Then do we have a plan, or at least have a conversation about what we do? Because
Well, I mean,
we weren't expecting our haircut.
yeah, well, with the heritage portion of looking after those species, that's like, again, $100,000 that we get, and we have to match it with special funds, which is our rental income and everything. And again, that's why I love the way we're set up, because we generate our own revenue. Now, yeah, you're right, if the program got cut, it could be less management funds, and we just have to shuffle the budget around a little bit. We don't spend a lot now, but we would have to do that. We do get general fund appropriation for the buildings and like for Tim's salary. And we're hoping that doesn't get cut. They haven't really cut us because we're so close to with everything that we do. We don't ever overspend or so just this is crazy to say, with fingers crossed that doesn't happen. But I think we could make it work. And we're always looking for other grant sources, like we're the Chesapeake Gateway now, they have operational money. We've got that ready to grow grant in, that's $500,000 if we get that. So there's other things we could do. Again, I hope that doesn't happen.
If you got a guy who just vetoed any spending of money who wants to run for president.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I know.
he did work before.
Yeah. I think a lot of times they look at the bigger agencies too, but we're so small. Not that we haven't been cut before, but it's like, you know, DNR and transportation and all that, they take a big hit, even planning, they've taken a hit.
When does the Maryland Heritage Area Authority make the decision on approving the grants that have been sent in to them from across the state?
July.
Not till
July
July?
9th or something. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
it goes through the state review panel, that's where it's going through now,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah.
Any other questions, thoughts about that? It was particularly interesting to me since we are now a countywide heritage area that we are stewards of. And to have, you know, a significant bill that to raise money wasn't ignored, it was simply vetoed. So, it will have an effect, I think, on this countywide heritage plan, and get into that in a few minutes as we roll it out. And we'll have to be realistic. It's a 5-year plan, we'll have to be realistic about what can be done if there's no more money available to do it. Again, we'll be talking about the heritage area and where we are in the process. So, I would say, you know, if Dee Dee's on a group with all the other heritage areas, I'm sure they're going to be considering that, resubmitting that for next year. One of the things that the board can do when appropriate is advocate for these kinds of things. You know, we're on a board to be advocates of this project. So I'm sure as we get closer to January next year, the new legislative session, we'll have conversations about where we are and what that legislation might look like, and what we as board members can do to try to advance it. So appreciate the update on that. Any other questions from any of the information contained in Dee Dee's report? I appreciate all the energy that you take to write that. Very important. All right, I think next thing on the agenda is the National Park Service report.
Great. And as Pauline mentioned, our superintendent, Tina Capetta, is retiring. She's had 37 years service in the Park Service. And so she'll be leaving May 31st. Our deputy superintendent, Ed Winshoff, will be acting as superintendent. And I'm sure will be acting as the representative to the board here. And I'll continue to represent Ed on the board and be the representative from the park. As I think Tina had emailed Dee Dee that, you know, I'll be working with the park. And then we also still have our interpretive presence here. Ian Gray is here as an interpretive ranger representing Carmen. We're in flood recovery mode right now. All up and down the canal. They've impacted the canal in many different ways. There's been a towpath here near Old Town near Lock 68, where we've sandbagged the breach to keep the water from doing more damage. And we have temporary measures to put a bridge over that breach after compliance is done. And then we hope to plan for long-term repairs of that. But yeah, it's kind of taken over every single thing we're doing. We've been doing assessments of aqueducts and culverts and dams, those structures, dams, and it's going to be a big commitment for the park to try to restore, you know, access and you know, rehabilitate everything back to the way it was. So that's what we're working on right now. So that's all.
All right.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, absolutely.
Chris, what's the time frame for the temporary bridge? Are you,
For the one at the breach?
yeah, this is
We,
at the mile marker there and
yeah, it's at marker 165.75.
yeah,
We are hoping to have that bridge in place soon, in the next week or two, I would think. We have compliance that's underway right now.
that's great news.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
The day of the flooding when Western Port and, you know, those communities were getting horribly affected. I got a text from Dee Dee that there was flooding here. And I came down and was able to go through the National Park Service office with Tim Martin. Apparently just 2 hours prior to that, there were fish up on the esplanade. But I think the only real damage was to the National Park Service office, and the carpet was just soaked through and everything.
We had a meeting there the next day.
Oh, did you?
And
Yeah.
I was impressed with the Canal Place staff that had dried it out and put in dehumidifiers and fans.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that.
Yeah.
So it's looking really good. I'm in there today.
Yeah.
So, but it is, it was unexpected, because I stopped by the night before to check on water conditions around here, and it didn't look like anything was gonna happen, but it
Yeah.
did.
I know Tim spent a lot of time there. Those folks with some volunteers, so they did a good job. Thanks for acknowledging. All right, next order of business is old business. I have a couple of things I want to kind of frame the house a little bit here. I spent a lot of time on the plan. I know I talked to some of you in the meetings I've had with you about the plan. I think it's important. Plans, sometimes there'll be great expense, time, money in writing plans to sit on a shelf. I've been a firm believer that plans ought to be a blueprint for what you're going to do in the future. So my review of the draft plan was with that in mind. Whatever was going to be said in this plan were things that we were going to be required to execute upon. So I had some general comments to the draft that I looked at. I think Dee Dee sent it out maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago. When I spoke with some of you, you had some thoughts on the plan. Some of you made some comments in writing about the plan. So there's a lot of discussion going on about this plan. One of the things that I wanted to know, and I asked Dee Dee to put together, and she did, is the timeline for the plan approval. And that was actually sent to you in your materials. So we know kind of what's the last piece of the process of approval of the plan, and back it up from there. My primary interest was in having a conversation at this board meeting for those of you who didn't have an opportunity to comment on it, and for you to make those comments on it. And then we would take the written comments, and Dee Dee and her staff will incorporate to the best of their ability the recommended additions, changes to that draft plan we've already seen. You will then, as the board, get a second opportunity to look at a new redraft with your comments in it. So that's why I wanted that timeline, so you can see that you will have that chance. We will then have the opportunity to approve that second draft before it moves on to the other pieces of the approval process. I've asked Dee Dee if I could meet with the plan author after we incorporate these comments that you all made. So we make sure, and in my mind, planning is in my background, that I want to be able to make sure that we have incorporated the things that you think are most important. I hope that makes sense to everyone. One of the things that I noticed in the plan there were recommendations to modify our current bylaws and potentially change the composition of the board. And kind of a red flag went up in my head, having served on the board before, is that I knew that there were bylaws that we constructed, but there's also Maryland statute, which is a much more difficult process to change. So I was able to have a conversation with Dee Dee and our attorney, Adam Snyder, and I asked him if he could maybe give us a short tutorial on what things we as a board can change and what things that will be required a change legislatively. So, Adam?
Yeah, it's you have to kind of look at both documents together. You have the power on your bylaws to change your bylaws. bylaws. So you can, as a board, change any bylaw that you have. But when there's a lot of topics in your bylaws that are also treated in statute. And for those topics, you can change your bylaws, but it's not going to change anything because the statute is going to control over the bylaws. So when we're talking about the composition of the board, and if, say, the board wanted to diversify membership so that different members were drawn from different portions of Allegheny County, you could certainly do that as a bylaw change, but it wouldn't affect the statute, which gives the governor the authority to appoint 6 members of the board without any mention of geographic diversity. So the governor could still just go ahead, regardless of what your bylaw says, and appoint the 6 members that he or she wants to appoint, regardless of what your bylaws say, because your bylaws can't tie the governor's hands. Now, you can always ask the governor when he's making appointments to the board to keep in mind geographic diversity and to consider appointing people from different portions of the county. There's nothing wrong with that. But you wouldn't be able to require the governor to do that unless you had a statutory change that made that geographic diversity a component of the appointment process in statute. There may be other aspects of the bylaws that are also repeated in statute, and that same principle would apply, that if you change your bylaws, you're not necessarily changing anything unless you also change the statute. But with respect to this composition of the board issue, yes, if you wanted to force the governor, to require the governor to appoint geographically diverse members of the board, you'd have to change the statute to specify that. And, you know, like all legislation, when you open a statute to that type of change, there's always the risk that the bill might be hijacked. People can offer amendments. It starts to take on a life of its own, and it's really difficult to control the course of a bill's travels through the legislature once you've introduced it. So there's some risk involved in opening up the statute to make that change. A softer approach that wouldn't require opening the statute would again be just to advocate to the governor in a letter or what have you, asking him to be mindful of geographic diversity when making his appointments to the board.
Thank you. Any questions from board members on that? Thank you, Adam. Appreciate that.
Sure.
I have looked at the bylaws. There are some inaccuracies in our current bylaws. One of which is where our office is located. So those are minor and they're administrative ones. Long story is that at some point we're going to have to take a look at the bylaws and make sure that they accurately reflect everything. And that's down the road. That's one of those deep dive topics, I think, at some point, but I don't think there's any urgency in doing that right now. So I'm going to open it up for any discussion, any comments any of the board members would like to make on the plan, including those of you who submitted, comments. Just a reminder that we're going to send out a redraft of that with your comments, hopefully some changes, and according to the timeline, we're going to do that by June the 12th, so that you will then see a new draft. You can make comments on that. I think we're probably going to have to approve that by email in order to meet all the other deadlines of getting this plan approved. So, Al?
Yeah, I just want to get on the record. And first of all, I'm not asking for a major rewrite or whole new appendix, addendum section or anything. But, when we had these preliminary meetings, I raised a point about immigration. And when I read the plan, I saw, and warranted, attention being given to African Americans and indigenous peoples. I'm saying it so I can get the word out correctly, which is great. But even if it's only a paragraph, and particularly since we're now countywide, I think of the paper industry, the the coal, the canal, the railroad, even the breweries, you know, these brought a lot of groups, and I just made a list of 9 that I know of: Irish, Spaniards, Germans, African Americans, Scots, English, Italians, Jews, the Dutch, throughout the county in these enclaves, and there was not one reference that I remember in that plan to any of that. African Americans and indigenous as well, but even if there's one short paragraph identifying these other ethnic groups, and particularly if we're talking about tourism, and attraction, and promotion, get these, I just felt that was an oversight that just needs to be a legal promise, just a touch upon it.
That's some guy named George Washington.
Pardon, sir?
So that some guy named George Washington. When did see him?
Thank you. Thank you.
Good.
And any other thoughts? I know Ashley you submitted quite a few, and then you had a meeting with Dee and her staff. On them. So thank you for those.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Again, you're gonna get another chance to look at this. I know it's a lot of reading. I really understand. I would appreciate it though, if you could do it. When the second draft comes out, we're gonna live with this.
What is the purpose of this? Is this going to be something that we need to submit to get approval for the expansion and consultant speak and bureaucracy speak is kind of what we need to do, or is this actually going to be the roadmap that you're going to follow?
But it's a requirement. When you're a heritage area, you have to do a 5-year plan. And since we're not countywide yet. We will be hopefully be countywide once the authority approves this plan in January. So it's our business plan that we follow. We think the one that the last.
Staff.
And
Well,
that's in the plan,
yeah,
additional staffing. It is. Yeah.
When we go countywide, you're absolutely right. We're gonna need more help. And we've been trying to figure out ways to address that, but it is required. It's like doing a town comprehensive plan or your 5-year strategic plan. Actually, you just went through one. So every 5 years, we're supposed to do this, but we're behind. So this is gonna expire in 28. And then we'll have to, they want all the heritage areas in the same timeline. So in 28, we'll have to do an update if this gets approved by 28. Which it's been uphill battle.
I just worry that you're setting yourself up for failure because it's kind of like the arts council. There's all kinds of things you can expand into.
Right.
When you have a staff of 4 and a budget of X amount,
Yeah.
you can't scale.
No, that you're right. And again, that was part of this legislation. It's like we are the smallest heritage area right now. Like I said, we're only 1.67 square miles. Those other heritage areas are hundreds of square miles. It's a lot what we do right now because we have the authority to help us to manage too. So that was addressed in the plan. We trying to apply for grants. Losing all this ARC is going to be bad because we were relying on a lot of that funding. So,
But bear with me. What did you say? ARC?
yeah, we lost. Yeah, ARC. But I don't want to talk. We don't talk about that right now. But we are losing all the anything tourism wise and things that weren't already. Well, even things we had approved, we lost on Thursday.
ARC.
And we don't know if it's coming back over the next couple of years.
I just heard this.
Clarify for me. Are you saying ARC is eliminating tourism type funding, or is ARC itself?
ARC is eliminating tourism type funding. It's like for example, we're using ARC funding to do the engineering and design work to build the trails and the parking. that project got saved. The Arise grant, the 1.25 million, we just lost that. So that was Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland, gone. Ken had a $17,000 marketing grant for the River Park, gone. I was gonna use $100,000 match for our,
Is that a policy change with ARC as it pertains to tourism?
I don't know if it's a policy change, it's just Doge came in, said this is what we're doing right now.
Oh, okay.
They're gonna regroup, I believe, in August to have a bigger meeting to regroup and tell us what's gonna happen, but,
It's
we-
just interesting. I remember in the decades run together, but I remember like when Rocky Gap was being developed, these places, we had put in several tourism related projects, and tourism was not something ARC approved. About 2 years later, ARC realized that tourism, the hospitality industry ties in with economic development, economic growth, job creation, central business district, you name it. It's an economic development tool, and it became a priority for ARC. And now it just seems to be going back, depending on, thank you.
I think,
I am leaving you realize I'm disappearing into the fog after this meeting. You realize that, right?
No.
No, I'm off all of it.
your replacement, I don't think has been named yet. You're stuck with us until then.
Well, I'm leaving Maryland Historical Trust. So if I'm leaving the Maryland Historical Trust, Preservation Maryland, all this other stuff, then technically I'm going to be out here too.
Yeah.
Which is
But
fine.
that hasn't happened. And to the announcement of the ARC, I just heard about this, the Dee just heard about it. And obviously we're going to be paying close attention. My own personal opinion is that these things are changing daily, and they're going back to. I mean, there's just a lot of
Back and forth.
talk about changes that may or may not happen. Obviously, we're going to be paying close attention. I want to go back to what Brad's point is. In my mind, there is no reason to spend all this time and money in doing a plan. It's not going to be a plan for the future. When I said I would rejoin the Canal Place Board, it was at the same time that this plan was being circulated. And that was my very first question. All of a sudden we're going from a tiny footprint to a whole county? And what does that mean in terms of, are we going to get a lot more money? Because that means a lot more potential, but a lot more work. So, I don't think there's any, there's no sense in like doing the plan. We can just check the box and send it forward. But at some point, I think someone's going to hold their feet to the fire and say, you got to do what's in that plan. It's going to be very difficult if there's no more money associated with it, or if we get a haircut like some of the other agencies have gotten a haircut. But if we're informed, because your names are going to go, they're going to be associated with approving this plan or not. So once our names are assigned for approving this plan, it is going to be incumbent upon us that we execute upon the plan or advocate for the money to do it. But that is what it means to approve a plan. We're saying we can do it. So, a discussion like what Brad has raised is going to be really important. My own sense is, as this plan rolls out, whenever it's finally approved, whether it be January or wherever, we should have an update at every meeting about where we are with this plan and where we are with the money to support the plan. That's really going to be the board's discussion on that. So, but where are we right now? Right now, we're going to take your comments, we're going to put it in. When it comes out again, please do a deep dive into it. We will probably have to have a telephone meeting or an email approval of the plan. I would much rather have a telephone so we can actually hear your feedback on it before we sign up. So, all right, I hope that all makes sense. Any other questions, conversations about something?
Are we sharing each other's comments with each other or keeping it with staff?
I think I asked that question of Dee Dee when I first made comments. She said you can send them to anyone.
Yeah, I think we should.
So can we do that, Dee Dee? Send everyone's comments out?
Wouldn't
Yeah.
know what other
I
people are
don't think
thinking.
there's any.
Sure.
You know, I think
Sure.
in the spirit of transparency, it'd be good for everyone to see what everyone else is coming on the plan. That way, when you see the second draft, we can say, oh yeah, Al made this comment and here it is.
You don't have to repeat the wheel.
Yeah.
But
So that's good. We'll make sure that's thanks for asking that question.
Reinvent the wheel.
There's, yeah, it's an interesting plan. I really wanted to meet the author right off the bat. Because I wasn't sure what county he was in, to be perfectly honest. So anyway, I will get a chance. All right. Anything else on that? All right.
I have another question, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Dee Dee, what all comp plans do you need approved to go to like countywide? I know that you need the county's comp plan amended, but who else needs amended at this point?
City of Cumberland. And I reached out to Ruth, Davis Rogers, City of Frostburg, I reached out to Bethany. Westernport, and I don't know what's gonna happen, that's my thing now. With the timeline, George's Creek, because I need Coney,
Right,
and I know Jack is beside himself, and I know Laura is too.
correct.
But both Coney and Westernport, I think Barton must go with whatever Allegheny County says, and so does Midland. They don't have a separate comp plan, when I was told.
So the January 10th of meeting with MHAA, is that a meeting you call or is that a meeting, do they have timeframes for?
That's the next, well, that's January authority, the whole authority meeting. They have a quarterly meeting in October. I'm not gonna be ready. That's what I wanted to be ready for. So I'm hoping to be ready by January.
So they meet quarterly.
Yes. Yes. But they also need to come out here for a public hearing, and they like to tour the heritage area in the winter. That'll be nice. I never even thought about that either.
Good question. Any other questions? Thoughts, comments, Brad?
Getting back to the board of directors issue, and I don't know why you have your attorney on, I think we may have had a discussion about an advisory group. I don't know, to the board or to the, because I do think it's important to get somebody from the attorney, and I think your idea is a great idea. And I was just trying to think how you accomplish the idea without having to wander down to Annapolis and so I guess for next meeting, if you could answer the question for us. Do we have the ability to create an advisory committee or a geographical committee or county committee or whatever name you want to attach to it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you do. I'm just leafing through the bylaws. The members may establish one or more committees from time to time as the members deem advisable. I think Dee Dee could probably also do that just as on her own to get input on the kind of issues that are going to be cropping up now that you go to a countywide reach. The one thing you have to be aware of is that depending on how you create these committees, they can be subject to the Open Meetings Act. So if you want them not to be subject to the Open Meetings Act, and for some types of committees that makes sense, you just have to avoid not creating the body by a resolution. It has to, that's where if Dee Dee were to just kind of, exercising her powers as executive director, just create this committee because she wants to get the input of these people, she can do that and it wouldn't be subject to the Open Meetings Act. If you all pass a resolution creating it, it likely would be.
There is a recommendation in this draft plan to create an advisory committee. So again,
We're talking about how to create it, I guess.
Right, how to create it, right. Right. Any other questions or thoughts or comments? All right. We done with that? To be revisited. All right, we are moving on to new business. Adam, I have a question for you. So we are ratifying the approval of the fiscal year 26 MHAA project plans. You all received an email about these grants. The grants committee met to review them, and they actually prioritize them. Adam, why do we need to ratify when the board received the grants and approved them by email? I'm just curious on it.
Oh, because when you
Can't hear you. Couldn't hear you.
Yeah, how about now?
No,
No?
you're a little quiet.
I feel like we're in the best part of the movie and gone down.
That's right.
How about now?
Yeah.
All right. When you take action by like email in between meetings, you just need to, at the next open meeting, record what the vote was and announce it for purposes of the public record in open session. So you don't have to have a formal ratification. You can say we did this email, polling of members. The vote came out X versus Y, and I would identify who did the voting on which side. If it's unanimous, then it's not an issue. But if there's some for and some against, you should identify that. The idea is that the public watching knows how the board members handled that particular issue.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense. I just need to hear it. All right. That makes sense to everybody? Yeah. I was probably the only one that was unclear on that, so I thank you for walking through that. All right. So do we know how many? We could do this differently than go to each one. Do we know who responded to the email, or do we know?
Everybody responded to the email,
Not according to this.
or, well, I got some and she got some. Who didn't respond? We don't say that.
There's 7 people responding, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like Stu didn't respond.
Angela.
And Al.
Don't think that.
All right. Well, he was on.
What was this email for?
All right. How about on my cheat sheet? We're going to do these individually now, but in the future, we'll know that we have a shortcut process that we can do. All right. So let's just let me not fear for my cheat sheet. This meeting. Thank you. So I'm going to toss it over to Kim. Do you want to make any comments on these at all? Kim?
I mean, I can if it's helpful, but if they've already voted and they don't need comments, I can give a quick rundown of the money requested.
Do that. We'll do that for Stu's.
I meant to respond.
So
That's my line. You're right, I might have confused.
All I got.
So just quick review, grants committee, consists of 6 individuals, 2 of which are here on the board, Michael and Al, Ruth Davis Rogers, Sandy Fidel, myself, and Deidre Roberts. We we scored them on the with the MHA template that we're supposed to use, and the following was what we have. The interpretation plan for the heritage area by Canal Place Preservation Development was ranked number 1. It had a 96% score, asking for $50,000. The second grant was an exhibit on African American workers by the Allegheny County Historical Society, asking for $10,000. That ranked 82%. And the last one was Western Mountain Scenic Railroad with the restoration of steam locomotive 734, asking for $100,000 and an 80% score. And I can give background on that, or I'll just let you guys ask if you want background on it.
Wasn't there a fourth?
Yeah, it says here Maryland Museum Association.
Oh,
That was for 10,000, I think.
So that's Maryland Museum Association is it is a multiple heritage area grant. So we were asked to not rank it, but provide feedback. So we did that. And they're asking $10,000. It technically ranked last. But we were asked to just submit our comments, not the actual ranking. So, yeah, sorry.
Very good, okay. All right, we're gonna go through these one by one, because that's what my cheat sheet tells me to do. So here we go. The CPPDA countywide interpretive plan for heritage area expansion. Is there a motion for approval?
Wait, I have a question. Can I do that?
And we can do, let's do a motion in a second, and we'll go to questions.
So
Well, her question might need,
the process is a motion, a second, then discuss.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
So moved.
thank you.
Second,
Questions?
The match is for ARC, so have you lost your match though?
Well, I have temporarily. However, when I spoke, I was on the phone with the grants committee today and the head of the Heritage Area Authority. And she said to leave it on the list. I'm looking for other potential grants and the fact that ARC may regroup and that might be a possibility. So she said, leave it there or just do,
It may scale back.
or maybe scale back, because part of that was a kiosk, an informational kiosk. Maybe we just do that. So we're gonna wait till ARC regroups and go from there.
Excellent question, thank you. Any other questions on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Right, that's good. Allegheny County Historical Society African American Exhibit at Gordon Roberts House. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Western Maryland Scenic Railroad fiscal year 26 project grant for the 734 steam locomotive restoration total. Is there a motion?
So
That's
Okay, any discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, approved. Final Maryland Museum Association Multi-Heritage Area Grant Small Museum Impact Study. Woo! Is there a motion to approve?
motion.
Second.
Any discussion, conversations, questions? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? All right, it is approved. Thank you to the grants committee. Karen, thank you for doing that work. Next order of business, fiscal year 26 CPPDA grant submittals, Dee.
Yeah, these are just the every year I have to submit for our management grant, which is $100,000, and we provide $100,000 match. So I submitted for that. We do the block grants for $25,000. We get the $25,000, and the applicant either has to do a cash or an in-kind match. And then the marketing grant for $25,000, and we're partnering with tourism on that grant. That's also a one-to-one match. So those are the three that my place is submitted for fiscal year 26.
And we need to approve those.
I don't know if we
My
need to.
cheat sheet says we do.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
And is there a second?
second.
Second. And any questions, conversation, discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye, please. Opposed? That's approved. All right, the next is the fiscal year 25 mini grant with Cumberland Cultural Foundation. Pam, I think you're going to speak to that.
Yeah, so this grant request just came in for the Canal Foundation, which is basically the Gilcraft Museum, for $4,403. They are requesting the funds to do a walkthrough history with John Wellington during Heritage Days event. They have several speakers, plan to come in to speak on evolution of transportation using the John Wellington works, in that presentation. They plan to, use those funds to cover landscaping, box garden, tent setup, pay for guest speakers and event advertising. And this is in collaboration with the Historical Society, so.
All right, is there a motion to approve that?
Okay,
Is there a second?
I'll second, just discussion. Is
Yeah.
there going to be any permanent exhibits resulting from this? Anything, that beyond the event, the activity?
Well, the John Wellington works are permanent. So they're bringing in these speakers and I think additional, but the speakers and, the event around what is currently already permanent.
They keep him upstairs.
Well, what I'm keeping, is there going to be some type of
That's where
graphic, exhibit, or interpretive display that can be used in the future and brought out that this isn't just a one-time thing? In other words, some of the other grants we've approved are for exhibits and displays that are going to be there. And this,
Yeah, this is more identified as an event. We can certainly.
is it a fundraiser?
It's during Heritage Days. He wants to do it for Heritage Day as a fundraiser.
Oh, it's a fundraiser.
Yeah, I believe they're gonna charge to get in. We did talk to him about doing more.
Who's him?
The guy that runs the Guild Press, what's his name?
Okay, don't worry. Good.
I can't think of his name right now.
Josh.
Are mini grants allowed for capital?
Well, if it's an interpretive just like that, it's considered non-capital, but yes. No, but for an interpretive panel, yes.
I only ask because you said landscaping.
I know, that's, yeah, it's.
I think they threw everything.
Yeah, they lumped a whole bunch of things in there that, I don't have a.
They're doing stuff out in the back garden, they're just gonna put flowers and stuff, but not change the physical landscape.
Yeah.
Like he has a tent and he's gonna do stuff.
Anybody else have heartburn over the landscaping? I mean, the event itself sounds great,
Yeah.
Heritage Days, but landscaping kind of.
Well, we can go back to them and just tell them,
The landscape.
take landscaping out of your budget, shift that money somewhere else, or just stuff it. We can do that. If that's the board.
Sounds like they could use a little help in structuring their grant application.
Well, we did meet with them.
We did that.
This is, yeah, sometimes you can take the horse to the water, but you know how that goes.
I physically went up to him after several. Yes.
May or may not have been a conversation.
So is it the feeling of the board is really good conversation to go back and ask them to remove the expenditure for the landscaping? Is that kind of the temperature of the board here?
How much of the 4,000 is for the landscaping?
I don't know the budget with me, but it was minimal.
Okay.
He's got till September.
Rather than having to go back and withdraw the motion in a second, which I prefer not to do in this first meeting, can we just say that it's modified the motion in a second? All right, thank you. Any more conversation, discussion, really good questions? All right, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, we're gonna stay right here, I think, with Kim for the RFP. Good Lord, did you have any more alphabet letters? Did we send this out to the board? I can't remember. No, I don't think so.
We sent a summary sheet
Okay.
of what it was because it was a lot.
Okay, Kim, you got your 30-second promo on this.
Okay, so a lot of you will remember we've been talking about this for a while. So this project started with an MHA grant last July. We were approved for the funding, you know, we got our match in place. Then we were kind of held up with the state because it was AI, the state had to develop some policies and procedures, so that slowed us down. Long story short, we got our RFPs out, or we got our RFP out, we got them back. That resulted in 10 RFPs, all of which were great. But we ended up reviewing 3, and the others were picked out solely based on budget. They didn't come in anywhere near a budget that we could even consider a conversation with them. So those three vendors were reviewed by us at the passage of the pandemic, and then they were also put through an AI analyzer, and that basically brought back the results that I put onto the spreadsheet. And again, our review and the analyzer basically came in very, very similar. You'll see the final rankings column was the AI ranking, and I put our rankings in the yellow, which are very, very similar. They're all 3 excellent options, if you will. And they all, you know, they all fell in line with RFP requirements. None of them were lacking anything that we were requiring in the RFP. So we had Arcadian Design Group, which is local, came in number 1 with the AI analyzer. MindGrub Technologies came in tied for number 1 with the AI analyzer, and WonderPop Design and Consulting came in second. And in our review, we put Arcadian as coming in second, MindGrub as third, and WonderPop as first. And I put like in the notes there, kind of where we differed. And that was Arcadian Group is local, which obviously that's, you know, a plus. They're familiar with the local heritage assets, Allegheny County. Their proposal ranked very high on cost effectiveness. But I will add that their cost effectiveness was a little skewed because they were only guaranteeing 5 sites within that budget, where the other 2 were guaranteeing 8. So that was a little skewed. MindGrub Technologies, they're again ranked very high. Their numbers, can't even read my own, it's too small. Skewed number compared to the other applications. They also had very strong AI AR profile. The references were really like phenomenal references. Smithsonian, Visit Baltimore, and B&M Museum. And then WonderPop, which is the one that we ranked first. That was really they ranked first with us basically because it was the most immersive. They were offering the most immersive experience, and it was by far the most creative of the 3. But I mean, everything else was in line. Budget was in line with all 3 of them. Yeah, the timelines were everybody checked all those boxes on all the other ones.
So your recommendation, Kim, is the one you just spoke of?
My recommendation is WonderPop or Arcadian would be mine too, for sure. I think MindGrub would definitely, number 1, they're a huge organization. And I mean, with 120 staff, they're in Baltimore. I can see that maybe being challenging for us. Whereas WonderPop's small, Arcadian's small, Arcadian's local, WonderPop's Maryland as well, but yeah.
Okay, so I guess my question is, what are you asking the board to approve then?
So I'm asking for an approval to move forward with Wonder Pop Designs and Consulting as the contractor for the AI AR RFP.
So that is the request. Is there a motion to approve that request?
Move.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Let's have some discussion, obviously, some conversation. Concern, question?
My question would be, does anybody actually have any personal experience with Wonder Pop or these other groups? Or?
I don't, that's why.
That was, because I'm kind of like, I know the Arcadian guys, but I don't, if somebody had some, some insight, but if they haven't, they haven't.
Defer the staff recommendation.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Michael, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Nobody really know.
And this might just be, even though I'm younger, I'm a bit of a Luddite. So are we going to be relying on AI to create these exhibits? Or like, what's that portion of things going to be? Because I just want to make sure that like, if we're using AI and they're just scouring the internet to pull stories that then they'll retell, that we have some way of verifying the historic authenticity of what's going on.
It is.
The internet is not.
AR experience. It will not be built in AI. It
Okay.
will be built with, it was, if you read the 100 and some pages pretty well.
I summarize.
Yeah.
I can't say I line itemed it.
Yeah, so we will work with the contractor to connect them with the Al scenes of the world and the other museums of the world and,
After
yeah.
50 years, I'm going to charge now.
Local resources and, yeah.
Okay, and then a second question, also falling under the category of I like pen and paper. What does the AR stand for?
Augmented reality.
Okay.
We got.
Hey.
I had that same.
So augmented, yes, augmented reality is more visual, just you're augmenting the visual. And AI is when it's providing that historical data and all of that.
Government organizations love their acronyms, but sometimes they don't know what they're talking about.
Good question, thank you, I did think things. All right, any other, and I think I heard, comfortable in going forward with the recommendation of the staff, which is the motion and second. On the table, any other questions? All right, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? All right, you have your approval.
Thank you.
All right, the last thing on the agenda is the shops at Canal Place rent discussion, and I'll turn it over to Dee Dee. Yeah.
Should I leave for this? Is this?
Yeah, we're raising yours.
No, it's not, we're not closing.
Okay, okay.
Because,
No, we're not going to.
Just-
I mean, again. So, yeah, Nicole had mentioned during her financial discussion that we've got a tenant that's late on his rent and he's repeatedly late. I'm not allowed. I don't go into closed session for this, right, Adam?
We're discussing this.
We're discussing rent.
A late tenant specific.
It's if you want to close the session to get legal advice or to discuss potential litigation, you can, but I thought you didn't want to do that.
I'd rather go into closed session then. I'm sorry. It's okay. Because.
Well,
Hey, you guys,
Get out, Chris.
Yes.
do you need a motion to go into closed session?
Yes.
I'll give you that motion.
I will second said motion.
Yeah, wait.
Thanks, Chris.
Time out.